Hello, everyone. My name is Elena, and I am London FinTech Connector community partner. And welcome to the first ever webinar organized by FinTech Connector. We have a fantastic panelists today with us to share their insights into the topic, which is basically innovators, everything about innovators and how they are doing what they're doing at the moment in current fintech space. But before we proceed into the panel discussions, I would like to talk a little bit about FinTech Connector for those of you who are not our members and probably have not heard what we do just yet. So I would like to give a very brief presentation into how we are operating. FinTech Connector is a global FinTech community, but quite often people get confused when we say FinTech community, thinking that we are purely the network created for FinTech companies, and that is simply couldn't be further from the truth, because we have created this network in order to help FinTech companies to connect to the other part of the deal. However, the interesting thing to notice is that FinTech has truly touched everyone in the world and all the businesses across all the economies and countries. So it's not just financial services, it has very wide scope, and our panelists will discuss that and probably will say a few words about this today. How we operate is we are truly digital and global. So we are represented currently in 96 countries in the world. We have over 2,500 members, and we have a portal, and soon we will also have an app. So our portal is very convenient place for everyone who's a member to create their profile, to promote their business, to get connected to others in the world of FinTech, to find probably, if you're looking for the investor or the angel investor or institutional representative, or the use cases are truly unlimited and quite widespread. So without further ado, I would like to start introducing the panelists. And our first question in the panel discussion will go to Jouko, who is by far one of the most experienced, basically, people I ever met in my life. And he is one of our biggest supporters of FinTech Connector. From the very beginning we started, we hosted successfully together one of the events, and he is running 10 companies, and he's very, very successful in serial entrepreneur. And the question that I would like to address to him is, Jouko, from your point of view, how do you think that the entrepreneurs need to deal with uncertainty at this troublesome times, and at the same time, what is the potential within the current FinTech landscape?
Yeah, thank you, Elena, very much for opportunity to participate this session. And yeah, I can also tell that the FinTech Connector is a great community, not only in London but in many cities nowadays globally. So that it's great to be part of this. Yeah, if we think the current situation, it is of course, I think, that complex for many companies, and I think that fintech as such has also so many areas that probably companies are also in very different positions. I have seen some speculations that, for example, in this kind of situation, maybe people are more conservative, and when there are also speculations about finance crisis and that kind of things, people might also think that maybe it is safer to keep their money in the traditional bank than, for example, in any neobank. So that there might be that kind of things. At the same time, I think that crises are always opportunities. And as we have seen that we now organize this virtual meeting when typically we have had more physical events, it's just one indicator what's going on. And definitely this is especially the time people learn to do something new when they are in the new situation. And in that way, I think that it is also important for any entrepreneur or anybody who is thinking new fintech services, that what could be the things people could learn to do now in this kind of situation, and also that what are the learnings when people work from home, they use different kind of online services and so on, how this could basically have impact also on the fintech services, that what kind of services, for example, could have more interest during and after this crisis. I think that it's still very hard to say that what are exactly those services. That I can tell you that I have also tried to think myself that what could be the greatest opportunities in fintech at the moment. And I think that it's still hard to say. Of course, there are certain areas that we know that might now suffer more. I think that, for example, real estate market, where there have been quite a lot new services, might have quite a lot also uncertainty. And then, of course, I think that what many people might find during this time is different kind of alternative finance services. More small businesses can look for platforms where they could find investors or lenders, and also private individuals can look for that kind of option. So that is at least one area. But as a whole, I think that what I can say is that of course, anybody who has the business must be careful with the existing cash flow and cash position, and it's better to be ready to act immediately when you see that you must make some changes and you lose, for example, a revenue. So that is one part. But at the same time, it is really to keep your eyes open to see that what could be the new opportunities that people are more ready to use after this.
Do you think that there will be any potentially new things coming out when we will finally finish the crisis stage, and as the new things for the fintech specifically, that some will be like a new user case or something like that that will basically be beneficial for all of us while we are sitting and waiting? I'm fairly positive, and I'm with you on what's going on at the moment, that we can use this time to progress and catch up with the things that we never had to. But this is very generic. But at the same time, because you're very technical, you've implemented a lot of projects.
Yeah. I can tell you that it's still hard to say that what would be exactly those innovations that would be a great opportunity now. And maybe if I knew them, I would already work to implement them. But I think that one question is also that how long time this continue and how the whole, basically the economy goes. So that I'm still very positive in that way, that it depends a little bit on the country and the economy, but I think that especially in the dynamic economies, it might be so that we have now very deep, but at the same time, when it's over, if we don't get additional crises, like for example, any crisis for the banking system, then actually the growth after this might be also very fast. And so that it's better to be ready that there can be also very fast turn in the economy. Another thing is then that this is not yet specific for FinTech, but I think that many people learn now first time to use many online services, so that I have seen that there have been a lot of people who didn't know how to make virtual conferences a month ago, but now they know it. There are many
and
people
we're a good
who
example. Exactly.
Yeah, there are many people who didn't know how to order food to home, but now they know it. I think that many people who have done much more purchase online and that kind of thing. So that at least I feel that this teach people to use many online services, and maybe it can also change how they can use online and mobile finance services. Then what are the services? I think that it is also true that during this kind of time, people want to keep their own money in very safe place, so that that they know that it is somehow guaranteed. But at the same time, there might be many other things. For example, money transfer. Of course, money transfer is not so new area anymore. But I think that it is one area where volumes are now going up. Then I also believe that, for example, finance services that are linked to e-commerce, so that let's say that if you purchase something online and you could easily get also finance for your purchase, I think that is something that is doing now very well. Then there might be also people who have time to look at something like P2P lending services, some online alternative investment services when people also take money out from the stock market and they look some other options. So that those might be some areas that there are opportunities, but unfortunately, I don't have the final answer.
No way to say which one, but I think we can agree together that this crisis will bring something else on another level for the FinTech, because FinTech essentially is the opposite of legacy, everything that is burdensome at the moment during this crisis. And it's a good test for the FinTech services life, if I may. Thank you very much. It was very, very useful.
And maybe one more point is that anyway, I think that most of banks have also closed their doors at the moment, so that I think that there still have been millions or billions of people who used to go if they have, let's say, they wanted to get a loan or anything like that. They wanted to walk physically to a bank branch. Now it is not possible, so that they must find also the solutions for their finance needs online. And at least they learn to use these new tools, and then maybe after the crisis, they are ready to look for more tools also.
Thank you so much. So before we move to the next panelist, I would like to say a few words to everyone who joined. That again, for the latecomers, welcome to the first FinTech Connector webinar. And the second part of the webinar would be devoted specifically to your questions. So once we finish discussing the questions that we've prepared for you, we would really love to hear your opinion, your insights, your feedback on the discussed topics, and maybe you would like to pose your own question, and this is why we're here for you. So my next question would be to Alex. Hi, Alex. Know that you have launched successfully a number of projects and things in your career, And as a true FinTech innovator, I think you are a definition of FinTech innovator. It would be interesting to hear. Would be interesting to hear your insights into, from your point of view, from the FinTech innovator point of view. What are the challenges that you have faced, and maybe you would like to share it with those who are about to enter this stage of their career.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for organizing, and I'm happy to join this brilliant lineup. And I was listening to Jouko, and I was thinking maybe I agree with him on such a vast majority of points that I might as well just say I agree with the previous narrator and move on. But since I have to provide some value, I will try my best. For FinTech or for any early stage enterprise, really, I think there are a few things which are always important and critical for the success, and all of those three things will likely be affected that way by the current stage of things. You need to be successful, you need access to capital, you need access to talent, and you need some sort of access way to market your products, you need access to clients. So all three of those will probably to a different degree and in various ways will be affected. And actually not all of those effects, interestingly, might be negative for an early stage enterprise, but obviously things will change. The most important question, and you could touched on it briefly, I think it's very important that, and I wouldn't start trying to predict the future. I think we're at the stage that we cannot really give the answer to the most important question. Is this more of a local event, or will this become a systemic event? What I mean by that is obviously I don't want to underplay the importance of this event and the impact that it has currently on the economy, but we can see completely different scenarios based on the way that the situation will develop. Whether it will become something that will be probably not forgotten, but at least will have a mild impact if we look at it back 12 months from now, or will it become something way more prolonged and impactful, and will it change the way we interact to a larger degree? I don't think anybody has an answer to that, but what we can say for now for sure is that, as with all the previous situations when some certain risks and volatility in the markets were increasing to this significant extent, the access to capital will obviously become a little bit harder in a sense. I think it's important to understand that there is also different kind of capital out there. So there is a committed capital, and this is money that predominantly sits in the funds that has to be invested under a certain mandate and normally within a certain period of time. So this is, for example, venture funds or private equity funds, or even some of the long-only funds, or many of them actually. They have to continue investing on the particular thesis, and there is money that has to be dispersed in some way. They can roll it up into the next fund if things really don't go well. But we will likely see that as things cool down a little, we will see that these investors will remain active. While you have uncommitted capital, which is more on the side of corporate or private capital, so where people are not really bound to any investment thesis and they can decide ad hoc, do they like something or not. So there you will probably see a bit of a cool down, because these investors are normally, first of all, not all of them are professional investors in what they deal with, and they're more risk averse. So they will be sitting on their hands for a while. And then the things will probably warm up a little, but you will see that, for example, if you've been in a sort of the latest stage of discussions with some corporate VC, for example, they will definitely slow things down now. While I would imagine that on the traditional VC side, you will see people looking to probably close the later stage deals. Maybe they will not try to get into the expand the pipeline, if I may, or expand the top of the funnel, but the deals which are in the later stage of completion, they will still go through, most likely. That said, the terms of the deals will probably be less favorable for the investees, for the companies, because obviously everybody will understand that access to capital will be reduced to a certain extent. Then, on the other hand, if you look at the access to talent, which is sort of the second big component of success, then you will probably see that a lot of corporates will use this, as they always do, as an opportunity to downsize a little bit, which normally means that they normally first getting rid of people they don't like, which doesn't mean people are not particularly good in what they do. They might not fit the corporate culture really well, and they might be actually more suitable for an early stage environment. And you will see a lot of we already see it on both sides of my business. So I have kind of two hats. One is running a fintech, a wealth tech specifically called Assetbar, and another one is a service company, and we are catering to the fintechs, helping them with products and technology. And we already see that on the service side, we have a lot of offers from bigger players, our potentially bigger competitors, offering us any support for people we need or anything along those lines, because all of them envisage certain trouble. And so that's a sort of the flip side, mildly good thing. So you might find it easier to hire people for your business because a lot of people will be looking for new opportunities out there. And people will generally get more nervous and therefore open to considering new things. And the third one, and the very important one, obviously, is access to clients. And I'm sure anybody who is in the B2B business right now sees that sort of B2B sales almost evaporated, almost stalled. So everybody's hands off trying to understand what to do with this situation when you can't really meet somebody and kind of get hold of the person who is the final decision maker and things like that. I do not think this is either way, as we discussed. It can be a long-term thing, it can be a short-term crisis, but in either way, I would say that this is a speculation, but I think in something like 4 to 6 weeks, people will realize that no matter what the situation is, the jobs need to be done, basically. So things need to happen somehow. And people who currently can afford to sit out a little and wait, especially if they understand there is no end to the crisis on the horizon, they will start looking for ways to sign deals, getting hold of the right people and things like that. So I think in any way, it will be probably a difficult year, but it will not be completely dead as it was in the first few weeks. We actually see the first signs of things picking up already now. And lastly, I guess this is something that we were kind of in the fintech community, people started from saying, we're going to take over the world, we're going to be the new JP Morgan, new Goldman Sachs, new HSBC, or anything along those lines. And then in time, the community realized that actually the way it worked well in the beginning to rally the troops, if I may, and get the first adopters and people who are keen on disassembling the current financial system. But as the ecosystem developed, we see that everybody shifted from sort of the vector of competition to the vector of cooperation with incumbents. And then later on, you could see that actually even the startups who were trying to outrun each other, they started working together because the ecosystem realized that even in some of the more developed segments of the ecosystem, say if you look at retail banking, so in the UK you have at least 5 big and very successful fintechs in retail banking side, from Revolut to Monzo to Starlings to all of those guys. Even they realize that compared to the incumbent market, they're very, very small. And by doing certain things together, they can actually achieve more than trying to outrun each other once they manage to skim over the early adopters. And what Jouko was saying as well, that what we will definitely see now is probably it will help many companies to cross this famous early adoption chasm when people who wanted to use the services and were comfortable using the services, they are already, this is the low-hanging fruit that has been picked already. And now instead we will see, and the other part of the ecosystem, the bigger the mass adoption part of the ecosystem, it doesn't really understand the service, doesn't understand how to use the service, is more or less comfortable with their current arrangements, with branch banking or whatever. So now people will be forced to actually try the new things in many cases. And that might hopefully give us quite a bit of uptick in the certain services which are catering to the retail public.
It was very insightful, and to be honest, I do agree with you. I'm on the more positive side again, for the fintech specifically. So thank you for that. And again, before I move to the next presenter, I would like again to note to everyone who joined us, please, we are looking forward to receive your questions. Either you can post a message in the chat, or you could raise a hand and we will give you an opportunity to speak in the end. But please do not hesitate to say something. We would really like to hear your feedback. I would like to present now János, who is basically a person behind this webinar, who gave birth to the idea of this webinar. And he was the one who initiated the whole thing when we had a discussion once. And he was asking me various kind of questions in order to understand the bigger picture for the fintech companies. But I realized that what he was asking me replicates a lot, mirrors a lot what people were asking me at all the events and various kinds of networking things that I attended and hosted myself. So, which is why we decided to do this like that with a webinar where you more than one person can attend and talk about these topics, essentially a bigger picture for the fintech right now and in the future. So János,
thanks, Elena. Thank you for having me
would
here.
like, you're welcome. We would like to address the following question for you, as you have quite a lot of the experience, painful or unpainful, successful or not, but you do definitely have an expertise in the subject of partnerships and collaborations. So what's your view on the risks in these areas, and what are the insights that you would like to share?
Yeah, I'll try to make a long story really short. So speaking about partnerships, why I can speak about this, because I'm from service industry, outsourcing, software development, and I would like to remind to the last example of whole industry change after a crisis, after the financial crisis in 2008. Because before, the usual model, how you develop your software, for example, using client vendor model, was like time and material. So you're actually renting like guys sitting on a chair doing something, and all the risks on the client side, all the benefit on the vendor side. And since that crisis, the situation changed. So it went to more like benefit model. So I think the similar situation will happen now, and like side effects, the regulation should be changed, because speaking about remote work, for example, it makes immediate impact on something like PCI DSS and all of that standards for fintech, because you can't, let's say, do it in a way like it was years before. So that's why you have to rethink all the stuff, all the processes. So that's why I think, as Deloitte mentioned it 2 years ago, the partnership is a future for any business in a modern environment, because as longer we are walking the evolution of technology and a business complexity, as deeper expertise we need to cover some aspects, dealing with those business areas. I mean, for example, now because of internet and because of other technologies, the business can become global really easily, which is similar to the innovation in the past, when a guy was a best singing person, let's say, in his area, and when the recording appeared, so he immediately lost his let's say, position on that market segment. So that's why now any fintech can become really global in a really short term, which makes really complicated and really challenging the managing of such business. So that's why I think any alliances and partnerships is the key for a future, as Alex mentioned. I had few calls with investors in CIS region and investor markets as well, and asking them a very simple question. So how you treat the cooperation between, let's say, service provider like software development company and some startup? And they said, so it's two scenarios. One of them is basically depends on who's owning the intellectual property. Because if you're developing some kind of algorithm, then it should be in-house. But if you're developing something like Uber, then such collaboration is much more attractive for them for investment, comparing with all the challenges the young startup should go through, like finding, hiring right person, and it can take like 6 months and even longer. So that's why it's additional risk and it's additional slowing down factors, let's say. So that's why the partnership, as I said, is a key, but it has some, let's say, complications as well. And first of all, before entering any partnership, it's good to do some homework in terms of thinking about what I'm looking from this partnership, right? And how I see this, because I work with young entrepreneurs who are entering into idea of developing our own software product, and after they are signing some contract with some development company, for example, thinking the development company will be able to ideate their product, compose some kind of vision, and after transform it into a business roadmap, translate it into technology roadmap, and let's say in 3 months, half a year, they will have something they can show to the market. So unfortunately, it's not going to work in that way, because the core of your business, it's up to you. So you have to define all the vision, all the strategy, and let's say complement your abilities or your capabilities with partner capabilities to achieve bigger success. And that's why I think the communities like FinTech Connector are really important, because they have different specialists in various areas. Because, for example, again, so recent things like GDPR. So now startups going, I know examples, for example, in US, where they have the California Act. Guys are checking the IP address in terms of from which state from US that IP address access their web service or website, just to block that request and show the page that we are not serving you in this state, or allow it. And why it's so? Because each state has their own regulation. So the same with EU and US, for example. So some websites you can't access not being in US. And to cover all of that, the segment of consultants is a really good deal, because it's actually, if it's done right, it saves you a lot of money and brings you a lot of value just because of much higher efficiency. Because having everybody in-house is just simply not possible in nowadays. Because each company looking for best of the best professional on the market, and unfortunately, to become the best of the best professional, you have to spend like 10, 15, 20 years. So it's just a lot of businesses growing, and professionals is not growing so fast. So that's why I think we can cover in our future webinars the topic of partnership, and what kind of partners are in FinTech ecosystem, and what the strategies to acting between each other to get some great results.
Yes, thank you. You are absolutely right. Getting into the collaboration or partnership with someone extremely risky, and it could go horribly wrong, but at the same time, it could bring you another dimension of your business and potentially success. But you have to do a lot of due diligence before you endeavor that. Thank you so much, János. So we're going to move on with our discussion. Thank you again for those who posted the questions for the other panelists. I posted into the chat for us 2 questions. There are, please have a look while we are finishing up the panel. We will move to these questions later on. Now is our next panelist, Adrian. Hi, Adrian.
Hi, Elena. Thanks for the invitation.
You're more than welcome. Adrian is, we worked together for a while. We got to know each other pretty well, talking about his innovative solution for reporting. And Adrian is another very good example of a true innovator. and something that he created from scratch with his own hands and brain, if I may. So I know that you feel very passionate about your solution, and while you were developing all that and creating, I think you would like to share with us, from your point of view, which services are going to be in demand and or in decline. And perhaps this is a quite wide question, and maybe each panelist would like to share their point of view after Adrian, very, very briefly before we move to the next session of the webinar.
Okay, well, I'll give my response and I'll pass the question over to the rest of the panelists. From my perspective, I think the FinTech ecosystem is so innovative and is constantly evolving to adapt new technology. And obviously, regulation and compliance is a big issue in financial services. So from my point of view, in demand, especially with the coronavirus crisis pandemic, I think Jouko at the start hit the nail on the head. There are going to be some opportunities in this time, and I think one of them is infrastructure. And obviously now with people confined to the home, remote working, I think the landscape is going to be changed forever, and the whole environment is going to be pushed towards a fully digital remote working office experience, which obviously potentially will save a lot of costs for businesses as well. So there's an opportunity there for a lot of infrastructure providers to sell their services to fintechs, to help digitize their whole technology stacks. So that's one area I think potentially is going to be in high demand. Also, secondly, another area that's big in fintech, obviously, is data services. So as the fintech environment grows, there's a constant demand for data analytics, reporting, management information, and obviously client suitability reporting, because obviously with a lot of investments and portfolios and funds, there's a big emphasis on attitudes to risk and capacity for loss in investments. So there's a lot of technology, fintech technology could be used for assessing a client's suitability in that respect and how willing they are to invest the money. And that brings me over to the next part, which is artificial intelligence. So there's going to be a big surge in demand for AI, although it's relatively in its infancy in the fintech sectors. It's going to be a big surge in that, I believe. And obviously blockchain as well is another area. I think that's going to really take off now with the COVID-19 crisis. That's potentially going to be becoming a lot more popular. And in terms of in the decline, I think it goes back to what one of the other panelists said earlier, the traditional kind of high street banking facilities now with this crisis. You're potentially going to see the demise of them, and everything's going to be digital. So the whole landscape's going to be basically digital world, and people are just going to be doing everything through mobile apps and everything like that, and not going down to the banks anymore. So you probably see a lot of big change over the coming years in the whole scope of the way technology is used in fintech. So on that note, I'll probably pass the question back over to one of the panelists. Perhaps Jouko can answer that. He's still online.
Yes, I think Adrian was wondering if you have any ideas aside from what you have already shared with us in the beginning on potential industries or segments of the fintech ecosystem or any other ecosystem for that matter, which could be up or down after the crisis.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy question to answer when there are many aspects at the moment. I think that for example, when he mentioned blockchain, it is interesting question, because I think that there are certain factors now that this could actually activate blockchain, because it's basically a kind of model that how different parties can start to make different things together online. At the same time, then I think that it depends that how conservative people are in this situation now, and how skeptical they are to try something new. So that it is, I think that it is a kind of question mark area, that it can be very good or then nothing positive. Uh, but yeah, and unfortunately, I think that I have no simple answers that I can tell that I have done quite a lot thinking also with these models, and I think that it has been easier to find some potential areas outside fintech, because fintech still has also quite many its own questions that are linked especially to the finance services, financial regulation, and that kind of things. Of course, one question I have thought that, let's say that if somebody would create, for example, a lending service or something to support, for example, small and medium-sized companies and people who suffer and that kind of things, and wouldn't have basically license to operate the service. But if somebody would just set up the service, launch it, put it public, and be very successful and help also many people and many companies, it would be interesting to see that what the regulators do in that situation. Do they go to shut it down, or do they say that, okay, this is great, this helps now people? Because, for example, with SME companies, I feel that some alternative finance models and even a kind of collective, a kind of crowdfunding or P2P models could be useful, because I have seen quite a lot activities in social media that people somehow would like to help, for example, local entrepreneurs, but maybe also some other, if it would be easy online.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. I'm also trying to manage simultaneously all the questions that people are posting to us at the moment. It's great. I finally woke up everybody. We have a first question from the audience, and this is the question: how could neobanks, challenger banks, help consumers to overcome the COVID crisis? And on the other hand, how could they help business? The impact of COVID-19 is going to have a short-term and mid-term impact on fintech events. Many fintech use events to showcase their business and products to a large captive audience. What suggestions do you have for fintech companies to find and engage with investors and partners in this new environment that we find ourselves in? I'm going to start with János because I think he was very keen to answer that question. János?
Thanks, Elena. So a few comments on both questions regarding neobanks and the COVID-19 and presentation, probably mid-term consequences of all of this situation. So recently with Alex, we just discussed the topic of, let's say, market fragmentation or solutions available in the market. Unfortunately, the same situation now in cybersecurity. It was a nice note, a nice presentation from one CTO from Netherlands who said, guys, we are building like wheels, transmission, some interior parts, for example, or body parts from a car, but only few players on the market building it like a consistent car. So you can trust it, so it tested, it goes well on the road, and you can trust it. So I think the same in fintech for now, unfortunately, because probably in some cases it was lack of investments or lack of understanding what the market need. So that's why guys started with something small and after tried to evolve it. But I think for now, artificial intelligence is still in that phase, but fintech is in more advanced phase. So we have kind of blocks. We can build a complex integrated solutions for end users. And regarding the neobank, so the sample, it was 2011, and I went from Ukraine for half a year to London, and I had few loans here. I had to pay on a monthly basis, and that was crazy for me because sitting in London, I had no ability to come to bank, and pay. And it was like a rule of a bank that I have to show my passport, that it's me paying for all of that stuff. And I managed it through few banks who were capable to create like interbank transfers for that purposes. And it was really challenging for me. So that's why for neobanks, I think they should think about the new use cases appeared recently after this crisis. And answer to the both questions is the hardest thing actually is like customer interviewing and understanding the real business case behind the solution you're developing. Because otherwise it's, oh yeah, I have a nice idea, let's do this, and after give me some money. And before the crisis, amount of money ready for investment was really huge. So this is not my phrase, almost everybody can get the money, can become funded in this world. That's what investors said before the crisis, and now I think it will be changed. So that's why the practical usage, let's say, and some real ground behind the idea, together with partnership, can give that real traction to the startup. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Who would like to add to this question? Alex?
Sure. So there were a few questions, right? We started from what are the potential winners and losers of the situation. Again, we do not really know what the future is going to look like from where we stand today. But I believe that the interesting bit that we might be overlooking right now, but what we really, again, the assumption is we are looking to find the winners and the losers to either invest or to place some kind of bets, be that our money or our time on those. And what we might be willing to look at is sort of second degree innovations. So things that are on the surface, like, for example, video calls. Everybody understands we will be more comfortable with video calls, so probably there is a bit of an uptick in that. Or online banking or online. These are rather obvious bits that will likely benefit, and everybody will ultimately flock to these more obvious things. What we might want to think of is, for instance, Jouko mentioned in the beginning the real estate situation. So obviously the real estate market will suffer. So what we might want to look at or think of is, for example, all those who used to rely on the real estate earnings for supporting their businesses or supporting their families, well, would they run? So rather than just selling, we can obviously just sell real estate market, but we might as well look at where will this money go and where will these people look for enhanced returns. This could be other traditional investments such as bond market, for example, can benefit to a certain extent, retail bonds, or certain services that provide more or less secure investments to retail investors, things like that. You can think of few other ideas, and I don't necessarily have all the answers, right? But for example, Adrian mentioned compliance. So when we look at the lending landscape, we can imagine that probably it will become harder for SMEs to get funding. They will run for to less traditional lenders and may go for the private lenders. And there is plenty of private capital available for borrowing out there. However, this is the case when in this day and age with MLD5 and other anti-money laundering things around, somebody, before they take any money, needs to be able to see what funds are. And this is another, and they might not be well set up to do that as an SME. So there are plenty of second degree things, little pockets of second degree innovations that could be quite useful, and they might benefit, but they might not be on the surface just yet. And that Angel's question regarding the fintech companies and the search for capital and partners in this new environment. My experience with the venture ecosystem, and actually from my conversations and workshops with VCs, what I saw is that the majority of investments normally go into, so any VC has some kind of spam address where they receive a lot of pitch decks, and they largely ignore that. So probably not more than 5-10% of their capital ever gets invested into these things. And the two best avenues to attract capital is always either through an introduction from somebody they trust, for example, from a portfolio company, or direct outreach, which they do normally based on their thesis. So if they're a fund investing, for example, today they're investing into embedded finance, or today they're investing into lending products, and this is what they're looking for. This will not change. They will still keep looking for these kind of investments, and they will still keep reaching out and looking for introductions to the specific players in this particular realm. But if you do not get that, then probably the better way always is and always was to find somebody who knows somebody. So the communities like FinTech Connector, for example, are one of the best avenues to do that, because you have a lot of people who are who have certain links to the venture capitalists, to corporate VCs, or to corporations, and represent certain pockets of innovation within corporations. And that's probably the nature of their interest, to be the member of the FinTech Connector. So as always, as all of the previous panelists basically mentioned, being a part of the community and being able to find the introductions, find the ways to be presented to decision makers within the fund or within the corporate is always the best way to go, and will remain the best way to go. That's my view.
Yes, I agree. And I've certainly seen a lot of examples myself within London community members. And yes, Adrian, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's good. I think they've covered all points. It's quite a complex question, that.
That's true. All right, so do we have any more interesting questions from the audience? Don't be shy. We still have another 5 odd minutes to spare, and you know, anything that's on your mind, not necessarily related to coronavirus, but anything that is on your mind in terms of the experience as innovator would be quite interesting to discuss today.
I can give an example more close to the Andrew's question about COVID and what Alex mentioned. So again, from my experience, some cases startups have nothing to show. I mean, or it's just a kind of business plan, or really an idea explained in a text form. So that's why, again, a benefit of partnership. If you have like regular client-vendor relationship, you have to pay the full amount for a prototype or MVC for your solution, just to have something tangible, demonstrate not just only your idea, but how it really will work in a real world, right? Instead, if you're using a partnership model, so this is an example of how we worked with one of the startups. So we agreed that we are not getting any profit from the first phase of a project. So we are covering actually the cost for development, which was balanced because of distributed teamwork on this project, looking for much more higher, let's say, benefit from this project for each partner on a later stages. So that's how we spent like 3 months developing a proof of concept and kind of small MVP. And that dramatically increased the impression the startup made in front of investors, because they were capable to attract much more attention, showing something tangible, comparing to just pitching their idea and showing some kind of abstract P&L, how much it will cost, you know, budget, whatever. So that also can be like a good strategy for a startup to develop something bigger and easier, you know, come to investors.
Okay, before you go, we have another question from Diane, and Diane would like to know, do you know of any companies as an example that are doing right now, do you know of any companies as example that are doing right now by their clients?
I know one.
Okay.
Ocado, the
yes.
food delivery in London.
Yes, for those who is not in the UK, Ocado is a delivery service here, and yeah, they're doing great.
The most important thing, not only they're doing great, they yesterday announced that they have bought about 100,000 COVID tests for their employees, and they're happy to share them as well with other companies. There is plenty of very actually the response generally, I can say here in the UK, because I'm stuck in London, the response is generally very impressive in terms of how people genuinely pick up the button on many community-driven initiatives, and the companies and individuals alike, and everybody's trying to do their bit. I actually, as an outsider to the UK, coming initially from Russia, I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, I agree. They've held their fort very well, and a lot of people relied on them. And, yeah, fantastic performance, actually. Anybody else? Okay. In that case, I would like to try again to unmute Angel. Okay, Angel, hello. Welcome.
Hi, how's everyone doing? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. Nice.
Can you see me or not? Can you? Yes. Oh, you can see me too. Oh, wow. Okay, wow. I didn't mean to turn that on.
I can see your amazing
this is what I call my Corona beard. So I've never grown a beard before. This is my first time trying it, and let's put it this way: I'm not doing very well. But anyhow, this is me for now. So, can you guys hear me okay? So first of all, thank you, Elena, very much for putting this together. I mean, this is very good. Lots of great insight. I want to say thank you to János, Alex, Adrian, and Jouko. Alex, it's great to see you again. It's been a long time since our MIT course when we saw each other here in New York as well. So it's good to see you being part of this. But I want to say first to everyone that is on the line as well, thank you very much for participating in this, our first kind of virtual event. Elena took the lead here and really said, hey, I want to do an event and I want to do it now. And I said, cool, let's try it. And she set it up. And it's always great just to get people together in this, what I would say, hopefully not the new normal, but definitely in these unprecedented times that it's what I tell my kids, these are some crazy times, but it's good that technology is here and gives us the opportunity to stay connected, to share ideas, to understand the impacts of what's going on around the world. And having insights from this panel is great as well, not only because of your experience and what you've done, but also because you're really also starting to think about, as we continue with this COVID-19 situation, but also looking forward, is we got to start positioning ourselves. I heard this a couple of times, positioning ourselves to ensure that we're ready to propel and continue to move forward after we get through these unprecedented times. So from my side, I'm going to keep it short. I wanted to say thank you very much to all of you. Thank you to Elena for putting this together. And I'm going to do a selfish plug for FinTech Connector is if you're not a member, please join. And also we're going to be having a virtual member town hall on April 16th, which we'll continue to post. It will be great to have all of you on that as well, as we're going to be sharing additional ideas from panelists and members around the world about what's going on and how do we continue to position ourselves for success, specifically after we get through this. So again, thank you for your time, and I'm just going to now sign off and give it back to you, Elena.
Thank you, Angel. So before we finish the meeting, I would like to say thank you to all the panelists and all the attendees, and just to remind you that this webinar is being recorded, so we're going to use that link in the future for those who couldn't catch us or had troubles to connect. At the same time, this webinar is a first webinar in a series that we are planning to continue doing, not only because of the coronavirus, but because we have some things to say, and the questions are flowing, and it's an interesting discussion, and it's important to get in touch and stay in touch during these times, and in general, just to do more virtual events as well, not just live events, as we've done quite a number last year. So thank you again, everyone, for joining, and we will send all the links to those who registered, and yeah, if you know anybody who would like to receive the link, let me know, and let's continue the discussion. Please do send us the question via LinkedIn, via FinTech Connector platform, by email, any way you can reach us. Your questions for the future webinars, and we will definitely see how we can accommodate those. And maybe you want to be a speaker as well and talk about something that you feel that you're an expert at. So so I guess this is it. Unless my panelists have something else to say.
No, thank you very much for organizing.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Elena.
Take care, Elena.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye.